The harsh winter wind howled through the ancient forest of shadow pine, where massive trees groaned under the weight of fresh snow. Deep within this frozen wilderness, a mother bear named Aurora lay in her den, her breath coming in quick gasps. She had chosen this cave carefully months ago, knowing her time would come. The air inside was thick with warmth, a sharp contrast to the biting cold beyond the entrance. Aurora had given birth before, but something felt different this time. Her instincts, which had guided her through countless seasons, were sending strange signals she couldn't understand. The cave walls seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy as her labor intensified. Soft whimpers escaped her throat, echoing off the stone walls. Far above the den, the northern lights danced across the sky in brilliant waves of green and purple, casting an eerie glow through the cave's entrance. Aurora's massive form shuddered as the first cub arrived, then the second, third, and fourth in quick succession. Each tiny being was perfect, wet fur already beginning to fluff in the warm air of the den, their tiny paws kneading instinctively. But then came the fifth birth, and Aurora's eyes widened in disbelief. The creature that emerged was unlike anything she had ever seen in her long years in the forest. Where there should have been fur, there was smooth, pale skin that seemed to shimmer in the strange light. Instead of the rounded ears of a bear cub, this being had features that made Aurora's heart race with confusion and an inexplicable sense of wonder. The strange infant let out a cry that was neither bear nor any creature Aurora had ever encountered. It was a sound that seemed to make the very air in the cave vibrate with an ancient power. As she stared at this mysterious fifth birth, her maternal instincts warred with her wild nature. The 4 bear cubs squirmed closer to her warmth, but this other being, this impossible child, lay apart, its skin glowing faintly in the darkness. Aurora's protective instincts surged as she watched her strange new offspring. The tiny being's chest rose and fell with delicate breaths, each one seeming more precious than the last. In all her years roaming the vast wilderness of shadow pine forest, she had never encountered anything like this. The legends passed down through generations of bears spoke of ancient magic in these woods, but Aurora had always considered them nothing more than stories told during long winter nights. The mysterious infant's skin continued to shimmer with an inner light that reminded Aurora of the phosphorescent moss that grew in the deepest parts of the forest. As she watched, transfixed, the northern lights above intensified, their cosmic dance casting sheets of color through the cave entrance. The strange child responded to the light show, its own glow pulsing in perfect harmony with the Aurora's rhythm. Suddenly, a deep rumble shook the cave, causing loose pebbles to cascade from the ceiling. The 4 bear cubs pressed closer to their mother's warm fur, whimpering softly, but the 5th child remained eerily calm, its unusual eyes now open and fixed on the cave's entrance. Those eyes held wisdom that seemed impossible for a newborn. They were the color of ancient amber, with flecks of gold that sparkled like stars. A new sound reached Aurora's ears, the padding of heavy paws approaching her den. Her muscles tensed instinctively, ready to defend her cubs. The scent that drifted in was familiar yet different, carrying notes of pine sap and winter frost, but also something else, something that made her fur stand on end. Through the swirling snow at the cave's mouth, a massive shape began to emerge. The figure that stepped into view was unlike any bear Aurora had ever seen. Its fur was the pure white of fresh snow, but it seemed to shift and change colors like the northern lights themselves. The stranger's eyes glowed with the same otherworldly light as her mysterious 5th child. As it moved deeper into the cave, Aurora could see symbols etched in light across its massive shoulders, pulsing with power that made the air thick with ancient magic. The white bear's gaze fell upon the strange infant, and a sound like distant thunder rumbled in its chest. Aurora's maternal instincts screamed at her to attack, to protect all her children, but something deeper held her back. There was no malice in the visitor's presence, only recognition and perhaps even hope. The mysterious bear opened its mouth to speak, and Aurora realized that her world was about to change forever. The voice that emerged was like winter wind through ancient trees, carrying the weight of centuries within each word. "Aurora of Shadowpine," the white bear rumbled, "your fifth child is a blessing foretold in the oldest stories of our kind." The massive creature lowered its head in what appeared to be a gesture of respect. "I am Lumen, guardian of the Northern Realms, and I have waited 300 winters for this moment." Aurora's protective instincts remained sharp, but curiosity began to override her fear. Her strange fifth child had begun to emit a soft, melodious humming that seemed to harmonize with the very air around them. The 4 bear cubs, rather than showing fear, appeared mesmerized by their unusual siblings' gentle song. Lumen moved closer, each step leaving temporary impressions of ghostly light on the cave floor. "In the time before time," the guardian continued, "when the barriers between realms were thin as morning mist, beings of pure light walked these forests alongside our ancestors. They were known as the Luminarii, and they kept balance in all things." The white bear's eyes grew distant with memory, but as humans spread across the land, the Luminari retreated to their own realm, leaving only whispers of their existence in our oldest tales. The strange infant's glow intensified as Lumine spoke, casting dancing shadows on the cave walls that seemed to illustrate the ancient story. Aurora watched in amazement as her mysterious child reached out with delicate fingers, so different from the paws of its siblings, toward the guardian bear. The air between them sparkled with tiny points of light, like stars fallen to earth. "But they left us a promise." Lumine's voice grew softer, filled with wonder. "Every 1,000 years, when the celestial dance of lights reaches its peak, a Luminari child would be born to the most worthy mother in the forest. This child would help restore the ancient harmony between all realms." The guardian's gaze met Aurora's. "You were chosen, Aurora. Your heart, your strength, your capacity for love, these qualities made you the perfect guardian for this miraculous being." The 4 bear cubs had begun to stir more actively now, their tiny paws reaching for their glowing sibling. To Aurora's amazement, when they touched the luminous skin of their unusual brother or sister, their own fur briefly sparkled with the same ethereal light. A warmth unlike anything she had ever known spread through her chest as she watched the interaction. But Lumine's expression suddenly grew grave, the patterns of light across their shoulders dimming slightly. "However, this gift comes with great responsibility and great danger. There are those who have waited centuries for this moment, Aurora, and not all of them wish to see the ancient balance restored. Dark forces stir in the deepest shadows of Shadowpine Forest, and they will stop at nothing to prevent this child from fulfilling its destiny." As if in response to these ominous words, a cold wind howled outside the cave, carrying with it the scent of something ancient and malevolent. The northern lights above flickered and dimmed, momentarily plunging the cave into darkness. When they brightened again, Aurora saw that Lumine's fur was bristling, the magical symbols now pulsing with increased urgency. "We must prepare," the guardian declared, scanning the cave entrance with alert eyes. "The first test of your commitment approaches swiftly, Aurora. The question is not whether you can protect this child, it is whether you are willing to face the trials that come with being chosen by the light itself." The words had barely left Lumine's mouth when a bone-chilling howl echoed through the forest. This was no ordinary wolf's cry. It carried within it the sound of shattering ice and crumbling stone. Aurora's cubs huddled closer to her, their tiny bodies trembling. The luminous child, however, remained serene, its golden eyes fixed on the cave entrance with an unnerving calmness that seemed far too knowing for a newborn. Shadow wolves, Lumine growled, the magical symbols across their shoulders now blazing with intense light. They serve the Dark One, an ancient being who has waited centuries for this moment. These creatures are not of our world. They are formed from the very shadows that lurk between realms. Aurora's maternal instincts surged with newfound strength. She rose to her feet, careful not to disturb her cubs, and positioned herself between her children and the cave entrance. The movement sent waves of pain through her body. She was still weak from giving birth, but her determination burned stronger than any physical discomfort. The temperature in the cave plummeted suddenly, and Aurora's breath came out in visible clouds of vapor. Dark shapes began to materialize at the entrance, first as wisps of shadow, then taking more solid form. The shadow wolves emerged from the darkness, their bodies seeming to absorb what little light remained. Their eyes glowed with an eerie purple fire, and their fur appeared to be made of living darkness itself, constantly shifting and swirling like smoke. "Remember, Aurora," Lumine spoke urgently, moving to stand beside her. "They cannot touch the light directly. Your special child's power, though new, is their greatest weakness, but the little one is not yet strong enough to defend itself. You must protect them all until the moonrise, when the ancient wards can be renewed." The largest of the shadow wolves stepped forward, its massive paws leaving trails of frost on the cave floor. When it spoke, its voice was like ice scraping against stone. "Give us the luminary child, Guardian, and we will spare the others. Fight us, and none will survive this night." Its dark fur rippled with malevolent energy as more of its pack emerged from the shadows, their numbers growing with each passing moment. Aurora felt a gentle touch against her back leg and glanced down to see her luminous child had somehow moved closer to her. The infant's glow had intensified, creating a soft sphere of light around itself and its siblings. The 4 bear cubs, instead of cowering in fear, had formed a protective circle around their unusual sibling, their small bodies pressing close together. What happened next occurred so quickly that Aurora barely had time to react. The shadow wolves launched their attack as one, their smoky forms surging forward like a tide of darkness. But at that same moment, Aurora's mysterious child released a pulse of pure light that filled the entire cave. The shadow wolves nearest to them recoiled with otherworldly shrieks, their forms temporarily disrupted by the radiance. Lumen sprang into action, their massive white form becoming a blur of motion and light. The guardian bear's claws left trails of brilliant energy in the air as they tore through the shadowy forms of their enemies. Aurora fought with equal ferocity, her maternal strength enhanced by something she didn't quite understand. Each time she struck at a shadow wolf, her claws seemed to glow with borrowed light from her luminous child. But the shadow pack was relentless. For each wolf that dissipated into smoke, 2 more seemed to form from the darkness. Aurora's strength was fading fast, the exertion of battle taking its toll on her already exhausted body. A particularly large shadow wolf slipped past her defense, its jaws aimed for the cubs. Aurora's heart nearly stopped. She was too far away to intercept it in time. Yet, just before the wolf's shadowy fangs could reach their target, something extraordinary happened. The 4 bear cubs, moving with unexpected coordination, stood up on their hind legs. As they did, the light emanating from their unusual sibling seemed to flow through them. their tiny forms began to glow with the same otherworldly radiance, and when they roared, a sound that should have been impossible for cubs so young, it carried the force of ancient magic. The shadow wolf was thrown backward, its smoky form dissipating instantly upon contact with the cub's combined light. The remaining shadow pack hesitated, their glowing purple eyes showing the first signs of fear. The temperature in the cave began to rise again as the dark creature's influence weakened. The leader of the shadow wolves snarled in frustration, its form flickering between solid and smoke. "This is not over," it growled, its voice echoing with supernatural menace. "The Dark One's hunger grows stronger with each passing century. We will return, and next time, not even the combined light of your pathetic family will be enough to save you." With a final snarl of defiance, the shadow wolves dissolved into wisps of darkness that slithered away into the night, leaving behind only patches of frost on the cave floor and the lingering scent of ancient malevolence. The sudden silence was broken only by the heavy breathing of Aurora and Lumine, and the soft musical humming of the luminous child. Aurora rushed to check on her cubs, her heart still racing from the battle. To her amazement, none of them showed any signs of fear or distress. Instead, the 4 bear cubs were gathered around their glowing sibling, their fur still shimming faintly with residual light. The special child reached out with delicate fingers, touching each cub's nose in turn, causing small sparkles of light to dance between them like playful fireflies. "What you witnessed was only the beginning," Lumine said, moving closer to examine the cubs. The guardian bear's white fur was slightly singed in places where the shadow wolves had managed to land attacks, but the magical symbols across their shoulders still pulsed with steady light. "The bond between your cubs and the luminary child is unprecedented. Never in all our histories has there been record of regular bear cubs sharing in the light's power this way." Aurora watched as her luminous child, who she had begun thinking of as Dawn in her heart, created small spheres of light that floated around the cave like gentle stars. The other cubs batted at them playfully, their earlier battle courage now transformed into innocent joy. The sight filled her with both wonder and worry. "But how can this be?" Aurora asked, finding her voice for the first time since the strange night began. "My cubs are only newly born. How could they stand against creatures of shadow?" She nuzzled each of her children in turn, breathing in their scents, 4 carrying the familiar smell of bear cubs, but Dawn's scent was like morning dew and starlight. Lumen settled down beside the family, their massive form creating a protective barrier between them and the cave entrance. The old stories speak of something called the Circle of Light, a prophesied gathering of 6 beings whose combined power could restore balance to all realms. For centuries we thought it referred to 6 different luminari, but perhaps— the Guardian's eyes gleamed with sudden understanding. "Perhaps we misinterpreted. The prophecy never specified what kind of beings they would be." As if in response to these words, Dawn created another floating sphere of light, larger than the others. Within its glow, images began to form, like a window into another world. Aurora and her cubs watched in fascination as scenes played out in the magical light. Vast forests untouched by darkness, creatures of light and shadow living in harmony, and bears who walked paths of starlight between the realms. "These are memories of the world as it once was," Lumine explained softly, "before the Dark One's hunger began to consume the light. The Luminari were not just beings of power, they were peacekeepers, maintaining balance between all forces. When they retreated, that balance was lost." The Guardian's voice grew heavy with emotion. "The Dark One was once a guardian of shadow, meant to protect the necessary darkness that all worlds need. but without the luminary's influence it became corrupted, consuming more and more until its hunger became insatiable. Dawn's light sphere shifted, showing new images, ones that made Aurora's fur stand on end. Vast swathes of forest consumed by living darkness, creatures transformed into shadow servants, and a massive, formless being of pure darkness that seemed to devour light itself. The 4 bear cubs pressed closer to their mother, but Dawn remained serene, watching the images with those wise, ancient eyes. "The Dark One grows stronger with each passing century," Lumine continued. "It has devoured 3 entire realms already, adding their power to its own. The shadow wolves you fought tonight were just a small fraction of its forces. Soon it will be strong enough to break through the ancient barriers that still protect this realm." The guardian bear turned to look at Dawn. "Unless—" Before Lumen could finish, the cave was suddenly filled with a new presence. The northern lights above intensified to an almost blinding degree, and a voice like wind chimes and rushing water filled their minds. "Unless the circle of light is completed before the next solar eclipse." The source of the voice materialized in the center of the cave, a being of pure light in the form of a tall, elegant figure. Its presence was both beautiful and terrifying, like staring into the heart of a star. Aurora's cubs, including Dawn, bowed their heads in unison, recognizing a power far greater than their own. "I am Celestia," the being announced, its voice resonating in their very souls. "I was one of the last luminary to leave this realm, and I have watched over your family since before your birth, Aurora. Your cubs, all 6 of you," it said, including Dawn in its gesture, "are the circle of light we have awaited. But you must be trained, prepared for what is to come. The Dark One knows of your existence now, and it will send far worse than shadow wolves to destroy you." The being of light knelt down beside Dawn, touching the child's forehead with a finger of pure radiance. Symbols similar to those on Lumen's shoulders appeared on Dawn's skin, glowing softly. "You have until the next solar eclipse, 3 months from now, to master your combined powers. Only then will you have a chance of facing the Dark One and restoring balance to all realms." Aurora looked at her cubs. 5 unique souls, each now marked by destiny in their own way. The weight of this responsibility should have terrified her, but instead she felt a deep sense of rightness. These were her children, whether born of flesh or light, and she would face any challenge to protect them and help them fulfill their purpose. As the first rays of dawn pierced the winter sky, Celestia began teaching Aurora's family about their newfound powers. The luminous being created a protective barrier of light around the cave entrance, explaining that it would hide them from the Dark One's servants while they trained. Inside this sanctuary, time seemed to flow differently. Each moment stretched with purpose and possibility. Dawn, the luminous child, was growing at an extraordinary rate. Within days, they could walk and communicate through a combination of light patterns and emotional projections that the bears could somehow understand. The 4 bear cubs, whom Aurora had named Storm, River, Frost, and Echo, were also developing far faster than normal bear cubs, their bodies and minds enhanced by their connection to their celestial sibling. "The bond you share is unique in all the realms," Celestia explained one morning, watching as Dawn taught the cubs to create shields of light around themselves. "Each of you represents a different aspect of the natural world, strengthened by your connection to the light." The being of radiance moved among them, touching each cub in turn. "Storm, you carry the power of the sky and wind. River, yours is the strength of flowing water and adaptation. Frost, you hold the essence of ice and endurance. And Echo, You possess the gift of sound and harmony. Aurora watched with pride as her cubs practiced their abilities. Storm could now create small whirlwinds of light that could deflect shadow energy. River learned to flow like water through solid objects when wrapped in dawn's light. Frost developed the ability to freeze shadows solid, making them brittle enough to shatter. Echo discovered they could amplify dawn's power through harmonic roars that could dispel darkness. But their training was interrupted one stormy evening when a new threat emerged. The barrier around the cave entrance flickered with warning pulses of light, and Lumenin, who had been patrolling the perimeter, rushed inside. "They're coming," the guardian bear announced grimly. "The Dark One has sent its shadow stalkers." Celestia's form brightened with concern. "Shadow stalkers are far more dangerous than shadow wolves," they explained quickly. "They can corrupt living creatures, turning them into servants of darkness. If even one of you falls to their influence, the circle will be broken." The cave trembled as massive forms materialized from the darkness outside. Creatures that seemed to be made of living night, their bodies a constantly shifting mass of tentacles and claws. Unlike the shadow wolves, these beings moved with terrifying intelligence, probing the light barrier for weaknesses. "Remember what we practiced," Celestia instructed, their voice steady despite the growing danger. "The circle draws its strength from your unity. Together, you are far stronger than apart." Dawn moved to the center of the cave, their small form glowing brighter than ever before. The 4 bear cubs took their positions around their sibling, forming a perfect circle. Aurora and Lumen stood guard, ready to protect the young ones if the barrier failed. The first shadow stalker breached the light barrier with a sound like tearing reality. Its dark tentacles reached for River, trying to corrupt the young bear's pure heart. But Storm reacted instantly, creating a cyclone of light that deflected the shadowy appendages. Frost followed up by freezing the exposed tentacles, while Echo's harmonious roar shattered them into countless dark shards. More shadow stalkers poured through the weakening barrier, their forms merging together into a massive wave of darkness that threatened to engulf the entire cave. Dawn's eyes began to glow with an intense golden light, and they raised their small hands toward the ceiling. Streams of pure radiance flowed from them to each of the cubs, connecting them all in a web of light. What happened next would be remembered in bear legends for generations to come. The 4 cubs began to transform, their bodies growing to adult size within moments, their fur blazing with celestial fire. Storm's coat crackled with lightning made of light. River's fur flowed like liquid starlight. Frost's body emanated crystals of frozen radiance. Echo's form vibrated with visible waves of harmonic energy. Together, they released their combined power in a blast that turned night into day. The shadow stalkers shrieked in voices that shook the mountains, their corrupted forms unable to withstand the pure force of the circle's unity. The wave of darkness was pushed back, disintegrating into harmless shadows that fled into the night. But the victory came at a cost. As the light faded, the cubs returned to their normal size, exhausted by their first major display of power. Dawn swayed on their feet, their usual bright glow dimmed to a faint shimmer. Aurora rushed to gather her children close, licking their faces and checking for any signs of corruption. "That was remarkable," Celestia said softly, moving to examine each of the young ones. "But it was also dangerous. You tapped into powers you're not yet ready to fully control. The Dark One will have felt this display of light magic. We must move to a safer location to continue your training." Lumen nodded in agreement. "There is an ancient temple deep in the Crystal Mountains," the guardian bear suggested. "It was built by the Luminari before they left our realm. Its walls are inscribed with their knowledge and power. If anywhere is safe for us to continue preparing for the final confrontation, it's there. Aurora looked at her tired cubs, now sleeping peacefully in a pile, their fur still occasionally flickering with residual light. Dawn lay in the center of their group, one hand resting on each sibling's head, their shared dreams visible as soft auroras dancing above them. The sight filled her with both love and fear. Love for these extraordinary children who had been entrusted to her care, and fear for the dangerous path that lay ahead of them. "The journey to the Crystal Mountains will take 3 days," Lumine answered, their voice heavy with concern. "Through the Valley of Whispers and across the Mirror Lakes. Each path holds its own dangers, and the Dark One's influence grows stronger with each passing hour." They set out as the moon reached its peak, using its silver light to guide their way. Dawn created a subtle dome of luminescence around the group that bent light around them, making them nearly invisible to unfriendly eyes. The cubs, though still tired from their earlier battle, moved with determined steps alongside their mother. The Valley of Whispers lived up to its name. As they descended into its depths, voices seemed to emerge from every shadow, some sweet and enticing, others dark and threatening. Aurora noticed her cubs drawing closer together, their fur bristling at the unseen speakers. "The whispers are echoes of ancient magic," Celestia explained, their form providing additional light in the darkness. "Some are memories of the time before the Dark One's corruption. Others are reflections of its growing power. Do not listen too closely to any single voice, or it may trap your mind in its story." But even as Celestia spoke these words of warning, River suddenly stopped, head tilted as if listening to something only they could hear. The young bear's eyes began to glaze over with a strange, silvery film. "Mother?" River whispered, but the voice that emerged was not their own. "Why did you abandon us, Mother, when the darkness came?" Dawn moved swiftly, pressing their glowing hand against River's forehead. Light pulsed between them, and River shook their head as if awakening from a dream. "The whispers," River said, shuddering. "They showed me the moment the luminary left this realm. So much pain, so much loss. That is why we must succeed." Dawn spoke for the first time, their voice like chimes in a gentle breeze. "To heal the wounds of the past and prevent new ones from forming." The other cubs gathered around their celestial sibling, drawing strength from Dawn's quiet confidence. As they reached the center of the valley, the whispers grew more insistent, weaving together into a tapestry of sound that made the very air vibrate. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet began to shift and change. What had appeared to be ordinary dirt and stone transformed into a vast mosaic of colored crystals, each one containing moving images. "The valley's heart," Lumine breathed in awe. "I thought it was just a legend. These crystals contain the true history of our world, recorded by the very earth itself." Dawn approached one of the larger crystals, their light connecting with the ancient stone. Images exploded around them in three-dimensional splendor, scenes from the past playing out in vivid detail. They watched as the first luminary emerged from the stars, bringing light and harmony to a world of primal chaos. They saw the rise of the Dark One, originally a beautiful being of balanced shadow who helped maintain the natural cycle of day and night. But then the images shifted, showing the moment everything changed. A great celestial event, an eclipse much like the one approaching, had weakened the barriers between realms. The Dark One, driven by an inexplicable hunger, had begun consuming the light itself, growing more powerful and corrupt with each passing moment. "Stop!" Aurora commanded, as she saw her cubs becoming overwhelmed by the flood of historical images. We need to keep moving. The eclipse draws closer, and we still have far to go. They pressed on through the valley, but the revelations from the Crystal Heart had changed something in their dynamic. The cubs moved with new purpose, understanding now the true weight of their destiny. Even Storm, usually the most playful of the siblings, maintained a focused demeanor. As they approached the valley's exit, they encountered their first real challenge of the journey. A massive wall of what appeared to be solid darkness blocked their path. Unlike the shadow creatures they had faced before, this barrier seemed to be made of pure void, a complete absence of light that hurt their eyes to look at. The Dark One's work, Celestia observed grimly. It has been busy while we trained, setting traps along the most likely paths to the temple. This barrier is designed to absorb light. Any attempt to break through with direct power will only make it stronger. Dawn studied the barrier thoughtfully, their golden eyes reflecting the void. Then we must not fight it directly, they said softly. The luminous child turned to their siblings. Remember what we learned about harmony and balance. Light is not always about brightness. Understanding dawned in the cubs' eyes. They formed their circle again, but this time, instead of channeling their power outward, they directed it inward. Dawn's glow dimmed to barely a flicker, and the cub's fur lost its luster. Even Celestia and Lumen reduced their natural radiance to almost nothing. As they dimmed their light, something remarkable happened. The wall of darkness began to lose its substance, becoming less solid and more permeable. The barrier feeds on opposition, Dawn explained. By refusing to fight it, we take away its strength. They passed through the weakened barrier like shadows themselves, their minimal light allowing them to slip between the very particles of darkness. On the other side, they found themselves at the shores of the Mirror Lakes, a vast expanse of water so still and perfect it seemed to reflect not just the sky, but other realms entirely. Aurora gathered her children close as they prepared for the next leg of their journey. The Mirror Lakes would present challenges of their own. The reflections here were known to come alive, showing travelers their deepest fears and most secret desires. But as she looked at her extraordinary family, she felt a surge of confidence. Together, they had already accomplished the impossible. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them as one. What they didn't notice, as they paused to rest by the lakeside, was a single drop of perfect darkness that had clung to Dawn's light during their passage through the barrier. It settled into the child's radiance like a seed, waiting for the right moment to grow. The Dark One's corruption had found its first foothold in the circle of light, and time was running out faster than any of them knew. The Mirror Lakes stretched before them like sheets of polished silver in the moonlight, their surface so still it was impossible to tell where water ended and sky began. Celestia led them along the shoreline, explaining that they would need to cross at the lake's narrowest point, a place known as the Reflection Pass. As they walked, Aurora noticed Dawn occasionally reaching up to touch their chest, as if bothered by something beneath their glowing skin. Each time this happened, the light around them flickered almost imperceptibly. The mother bear wanted to ask if something was wrong, but Dawn would quickly resume their normal radiance before she could voice her concerns. The Mirror Lakes are not what they appear, Lumine warned as they approached Reflection Pass. The waters here don't simply show reflections, they reveal truths that even we hide from ourselves. Some say the lakes are actually windows into other possible realities, showing what might have been or what could still be. Storm, always the boldest of the cubs, stepped closer to the water's edge. In the perfectly still surface, their reflection showed not a bear cub, but a massive creature of pure storm clouds and lightning, its power uncontrolled and destructive. Storm stumbled backward, shaken by the vision. "That is one possible future," Celestia said gently, placing a comforting hand on Storm's head. "But only one. The lakes show us our potential, both for greatness and for failure. We must learn from these visions without becoming trapped by them." Each of the cubs took turns looking at their reflections. River saw themselves as a being of flowing water, bringing life to barren lands but also capable of devastating floods. Frost's reflection showed a creature of ice that could either protect or entomb. Echo's image revealed a being of such powerful harmonies that their voice could either heal or shatter reality itself. When dawn approached the water's edge, something strange happened. Instead of a single reflection, the surface showed multiple images, each one flickering and changing rapidly. In one, Dawn appeared as a being of pure, healing light. In another, they were a creature of shadow and flame. But most disturbing was the image that appeared between these extremes, a form that seemed to be torn between light and darkness, neither fully one